we're living in 2023, you know, I mean, we know a lot today we didn't know 10 or 20 years ago. I know there was a lot of, you know, people, they like all the retro stuff, but why is that? That's a very good question.
Welcome to StereoNET. We're here in sunny Melbourne at the StereoNET Hi-Fi and AV show. I'm joined today by Geoffrey Heinzel, the owner of ASCENDO. Welcome to Australia, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Tony. I'm very happy to be here, to be quite frank, you know, and I enjoyed a few very nice days already with the sun, by the way. You know, when I arrived, the sun arrived, you know, and
we
so
did our best for you.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for that, you know. So, yep, wonderful place to be. Yes.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Now, Jeff, I'm going to dive straight in.
Sure.
ASCENDO seemingly burst into the scene, well, at least in my eyes, a year or two back with your 50-inch subwoofer.
Yeah.
I'm going to touch on that a bit later too.
Absolutely.
But I know ASCENDO's history goes back much further than that. Can you fill us in a little bit about the history of ASCENDO?
Absolutely. I'm glad to. So ASCENDO, I'm not a founding member of ASCENDO itself. Okay. You know, so there were three partners: Jürgen Scheuring, Stefan Köpf, and Norbert Heinz. And after university, they thought, you know, let's do some high-end home theater loudspeakers. And some of the guys, you know, like Jürgen, also had quite extensive engineering experience. So we were actually the first company doing digital room correction in 1999,
really?
Which was called DASK, DASK. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So way before anybody else, you know, on the market. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and ASCENDO already from the very beginning understood, because during studies, you know, some of these people really dive deep into the psychology of hearing, you know, how our auditory system really perceives sound. And so we knew that the timing of a loudspeaker is in a way more important than really the frequency response. And we had already, because Jürgen developed his own measurement system even, which is even being still used today nowadays, you know, to measure not only loudspeakers but also room acoustics, you know, RT60 times and whatnot, and waterfall and all that. So we understood, having such tools at that time already available, that timing is really of utmost importance. And so the speakers that we developed at that time already had the capability of moving the tweeter in respect to the low-mid frequency driver. And that when you change your seat position, let's say your ear height and the distance to the loudspeaker, the timing needs to change between the tweeter and the mid-range. So there is to really have the perfect impulse response between these two, to get the perfect spatial rendering in two-channel, right? And so when I joined the company in 2007, I came from a different perspective of loudspeakers. You know, I had a PA rental company in Zurich, Switzerland. I had a distribution company in Zurich, Switzerland. I had a store. I was part owner in a store in Zurich in Switzerland. You know, so I mean, I had all wear different kinds of hats. You know, and so I brought that kind of perspective into the company. And also having lived in, you know, Brazil, being, you know, in the audio industry, and also having worked for a few American companies in audio, living in Folsom, California for 4 years, you know, then I learned a lot about all kinds of markets because I traveled extensively at that time, you know, being the director of sales and marketing for international for some companies. So having again, bringing this experience into the company in ASCENDO, I decided, together with Jürgen and Stefan at that time, because Norbert, for health reasons, resigned, to move the company in a different direction.
Okay.
And that direction was home theater. So I've been really researching the speakers that suit this kind of market the best.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. We did all kinds of research, you know. I mean, of course, we looked at line sources. We looked at ribbon, you know, magnetostatic tweeters, all kinds of different stuff, you know. And we tried it all. And in the end of the day, what we found works best for a multi-seat, not a single-seat environment, right?
Yes.
Is the point source coaxial. Yeah.
Yep.
And so based on that,
be my next question.
we developed basically then the whole speaker line based on that, and then another expertise I brought in because I worked almost 10 years with high performance and high-end car audio.
Yes.
So obviously subwoofers is a big deal in car audio, and it's important. And so I bring basically that experience from pro audio and car audio woofers, right? And kind of mix those, because it's kind of a mix for home theater, because you need the dynamic from pro audio, but you need the extension from like a low rumble kind of subwoofer, right?
Yep.
But you need the precision of high end. So all these three we kind of merged, and I designed basically all these woofers myself because I have the expertise, and so that's how I came to be part of ASCENDO. In 2014, we started really selling our home theater line.
Yes.
Yeah, but at that time, that were two different companies. So we found an investor in Germany, and that invested into the home theater side. And then later on, the investor also took over, or we took over then ASCENDO, the two-channel side. So now we're one company again, right? So that's basically the story of ASCENDO.
No, fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. Going on to that, you know, the coaxial drivers,
Sure.
you mentioned through your research that was
Yeah.
the best choice. Can I ask why, and can we perhaps talk about maybe some of the benefits of that type of driver in home
Absolutely.
theatre, and maybe even some of the challenges, Jeff?
Yes, yes. Well, there is no perfect speaker on this planet. It doesn't exist. So
Yeah, I've been looking for a while now. I'm still struggling.
everybody looks for the holy grail, of course, you know.
Yes.
But you have to make the right design choices for a specific use case, right? And every use case has, more beneficial or less beneficial designs, I would call them. Yeah?
Yes.
And for the use case of home theater, again, we're talking about multiple seats, multiple rows, multiple seat heights even, you know, because you have risers.
Yes.
In some of the larger home theaters. So all of these use cases need to be covered by a loudspeaker. Yeah. You have sometimes larger rooms where you have, let's say, listening distances of 5 or 6 or 8 or sometimes even 10 meters or more if you have really large home theaters. And so the speakers need to be capable of rendering without distortion in these spaces the sound. And looking at point source coaxial loudspeakers, they can do that because we have employed loudspeakers that have a very high sensitivity.
Yes.
On top of that, very high power handling.
Yes.
Yeah, and also low power compression. So that means we can really offer loudspeakers with a very high performance factor in a small package.
Yeah, fantastic.
Which is also important, you know. I mean, you can build, of course, monstrous loudspeakers, but how suitable are they then for, let's say, a home theater or for home use? Because you give up a lot of space, and sometimes space is premium.
Yes.
You know, if we talk about cities like Zurich or London or New York, you know, people don't want to really give up a lot of their space
Yes.
for loudspeakers, you know, because the real estate is really expensive, right? So anyway, coming back to the coaxial side now of the loudspeakers, a coaxial loudspeaker, and in our case, we talk about only and strictly point source coaxial loudspeakers. A point source coaxial loudspeaker differs from a coaxial loudspeaker because, I mean, sometimes you see a tweeter sitting way in front of the woofer cone. That's also a coaxial loudspeaker, but it's not a point source coaxial loudspeaker, right?
Okay.
And they already are quite different in terms of performance when you're talking about off-axis response.
Yes.
So only a point source coaxial, and when I refer to coaxial, I mean point source coaxial now, render really spatial very nicely on as well as off-axis. And when we're talking about home theater, we're talking off-axis. In 99% of all the cases, you sit off-axis of the speaker, not on-axis, right? And that's actually a good thing for coaxial loudspeakers because every coaxial loudspeaker on this planet also has one problem. That's on-axis. There's always a little dip in high frequencies depending on the size of the coaxial loudspeaker, right? Okay. But if you just move a few degrees off-axis, that dip is gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's inherent to the design of a point source coaxial loudspeaker, and it's not even a negative thing, you know, because you won't perceive it. Because what's really important is that the sound power radiated by the loudspeaker is even.
Yes.
It's the same, and that the directivity of the loudspeaker has a very even curve. You know, I mean, basically the control of the high frequencies and the mid frequencies is very even. So that is shown in the directivity curve in our measurements, right? And of course, we communicate all these measurements, not like many other competitors out there. You know, I mean, we really challenge them because it's a very naked thing we do. I mean, we show all and every measurement there is about a loudspeaker, right? And so we may not look as good on paper as some other vendors, but some other vendors don't really show their measurements. So that's why I say we challenge them to show their measurements, because then you really see how nasty some of these designs are, especially for home theater. You know, we're talking again strictly home theater here now. And so the point source have one benefit. They have a perfect impulse response and a perfect on as well as off-axis frequency response, which is really important because how do we perceive sound? How does sound rendering in a home theater really work, or in a small room, which we're listening home theater. You have a direct sound field from the loudspeaker that goes directly to your ears. And we have, of course, a reflected sound field, so from floors, walls, ceilings, and other objects in the room. And so our ears are very sensitive and can differentiate very easily the direct sound field if that sounds the same as the reflected sound field. If it sounds the same, our brain relaxes.
Yes.
That's what we're calling, in layman terms, basically, you have no listening fatigue.
Yes, yes.
That's where the listening fatigue comes from. When your brain churns and needs to really process sound that is not right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah? And if impulses are coming at different times, like let's say when you have a 2 or a 3-way loudspeaker with a separate tweeter, separate mid-range, separate woofer, what happens? When you do that in different listening positions, you have different timing from your tweeter, from your mid-range, from your mid-woofer, whatever, And when you pull a virtual string from these kind of loudspeakers to the left and the right ear, to each and every seat, there is always a timing difference, right? Yes. And this timing difference, what does it do other than being a timing difference and confuse your brain? It also interacts You know, they're basically these two speakers. They have a crossover frequency, a crossover region actually. It's not a single frequency. And then in this region, depending on the position, they get basically phase cancellations.
Yes, yes.
So what we call lobing. So when you now have, let's say, a reflection from the floor, because at the floor you have a lobing, or at the ceiling or on the side wall, or even maybe in a different listening position with a direct sound, how does that sound then, you know, to your brain? It sounds wrong. So your brain always needs to process these kind of sounds. And that's why the only speaker that really works is a point source coaxial speaker.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. It makes a lot of sense, and
I hope it does, because I mean, yes. What a lot of companies try to communicate to the market is, you know, completely marketing nonsense.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not based on physics, on physical facts, on physical measurements. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you for explaining,
Sure.
and I guess it's also given our viewers a bit of an understanding of perhaps the differences between a cinema speaker and a hi-fi speaker. And
well, I mean, there is, as you know, some point source coaxial hi-fi speakers on the market, and they are very good, perceived also as very high-end. You know, I mean, there is TAD, there is CAV, you know, and some other companies, and considering for the price point and all that, these are very, very high-end perceived speakers, you know, also from a listening perspective, right? For a reason.
Yep. Oh, very good.
Yep.
Very good. So, Jeff, I'm just dying to ask the burning question.
Yes,
the 50-inch subwoofer.
Yeah.
What on earth possessed you to make this behemoth?
Well, it's just, again, physics. If you think about it, it's easy to reproduce, let's say, a frequency of 100 hertz with high SPL in relatively small enclosures with relatively small subwoofers, right?
Yes.
But now, if you go down in frequency, let's say, we take 100 hertz as a reference, right? You have a 12-inch woofer, and you want to reproduce 120 hertz, dB.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So 120 dB at 100 hertz, that's fairly easy for a 12-inch woofer, you know, but it still needs to move some series air for 120 hertz, dB. Now, if you go down to 50, that same woofer needs already do 4 times the excursion, so meaning move 4 times as much air, right?
Makes
now,
sense.
Let's move to 25 hertz. What happens?
Yeah,
Again,
okay.
you need to quadruple the excursion or quadruple the cone area to get the same output.
Yes. Yes.
So that means already 16 times as much as 100 hertz.
Yep. Yep.
Now, let's move to 12.5 hertz.
Yeah.
Now we're moving
Yes.
into infrasonics, right?
Yep.
So another 4 times as much as at 25. So we're talking already 64 times as much air you need to move than 100 hertz.
Yes.
So you need to have either 64 times the cone size or 64 times the excursion. Both is not realistic. So why do we do big subwoofers? Physics, right? Our ears become very insensitive at low frequencies, especially below 20 hertz. So we're talking the Fletcher-Munson or equal loudness curve, right? So you ask me again, why do we do 24, 32, 50, or even 80-inch subwoofers, right? For that very reason. If you take now, for example, and a lot of people don't really understand that, but if you take your hand and make like that, there's absolutely no resistance you feel, right? Now you ride a bike, you already feel some resistance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If you drive a car, you put your hand out the window, right? It's already more resistance, you know, and we can, of course, go on and you fly a plane, hold, you know, hand is gone, high resistance, right? Everybody understands that concept. That's my point, right? Now, for ultra low frequencies, and you know, when we're talking 1, 2, 3, 5 hertz, whatever, you know, I mean, we're talking very, very, very slow movements. So the air can freely move around the subwoofer cone. So it cannot really push the air because the air moves around.
Yes.
Right? So when you jump out, for example, an airplane, there is almost no resistance to your body and you fly very fast.
Yes.
But when you have a parachute, that is large, you fly slow.
Yes.
So it's the same. Or when you have, an umbrella, and you walk really slow, no resistance. Yeah, but you start running, resistance. Yeah. So the speed is the analogy to frequency.
Okay.
You understand that?
Yes.
So why do we have a tweeter and the mid-range is larger? The same thing. So why do we have smaller and larger subwoofers? The very same thing. You understand?
Yes.
So
makes sense.
to become really efficient in ultra-low frequencies, you need very large cones and very, very large excursion, right?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You mentioned when we were talking just then, you said 1 or 2 hertz. What is there down there, Jeff? And does it make, I guess, a meaningful contribution, those infrasonic frequencies, to today's, Atmos and DTSX soundtracks?
Well, maybe 1 or 2 hertz not, but starting 3 hertz, yes, there is content, and yes, it makes a contribution to the spatial rendering of the sound. Why do directors put it there in effects, in LFE effects? Because it makes a difference, in the way you interact with the movie.
Yep.
It's all about emotion.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just you missed out so far not having an infrasonic woofer on all of that.
Oh,
It's
that's
a whole
interesting.
new dimension of interacting, perceiving, and feeling emotions,
Yes.
Being in a movie, it puts you right there,
Yeah.
If the woofers are aligned well and all that, considered, everything is done right.
I know.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So many enthusiasts like myself find it hard enough getting the space for a dedicated cinema,
Yep.
let alone a dedicated cinema room, let alone a dedicated subwoofer room.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Ascendo's room-friendly options when it comes to subwoofers?
Yes, certainly. We start our subwoofer range with a 10-inch, which we're not really considering a subwoofer because a 10-inch cannot really reproduce frequencies with authority, let's say below 45 or 40 hertz even.
Yep, okay.
Yeah. Of course there is subwoofers out there and they are 10 or even 8-inch or 6.5 inch, but this is not a subwoofer.
Yep.
This is a mid-woofer and it has no significant output below, let's say, 50 hertz.
Okay.
Yeah, it can reproduce, of course, maybe even 20 hertz, but do you hear these 20 hertz?
Does it do it with authority, I guess, is what you're saying? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And so it's all about being a little bit dishonest about the numbers, showing really serious numbers doesn't necessarily mean there is a significant output there, because let's say a 10-inch or an 8-inch woofer, how much SPL can it reproduce at 20 hertz? Yeah, if you're lucky, maybe 65 dB. Is that significant at 20 hertz? No, it's not, because our ears are so insensitive. Yeah. So that's why we start really our subwoofer at 12, inches, 30 centimeters.
Yes.
And the 12-inch inexpensive subwoofer is the V12 and has a 600 watt RMS amplifier. It's no DSP built in. It's basically an analog crossover, analog phase shift, And it's a subwoofer designed to go down to 25 hertz, even though the in-room response you can expect maybe 22 or 21 hertz or something like that, which is seriously low already, especially for two-channel. You don't really need that low for two-channel normally, but for home theater is deep enough.
Yes.
It's a woofer, and that's my design philosophy, that is very tight, very speedy, very fast. You know, we want articulate bass, you know, bass that has a lot of clarity, you know, and detail.
Yes.
Or when you play a double bass, you know, that you hear all the harmonics in between the notes. That is so important, you know, not a one-note bass hitting and boomy bass, you know, that's very easy to do. That's not ASCENDO. We're the opposite. We're all about transparency, clarity.
Yes.
But yet, if you want authority and low bass, I think we're the go-to company anyway, you know.
Fantastic. Jeff, I've been using a couple of your SV12 subwoofers on my own system for a few months.
Which we renamed now, it's the V12, by the way. Yeah, anyway, yes, but you're right, yes.
They're a bit of an interesting departure from the rest of your line in that they're more affordable, and they perhaps go head to head with some other brands in that price range.
Correct.
Is this something you see yourself doing more of, or something ASCENDO sees themselves doing more of in the future? Or?
Well, I have to kill you if I tell you, you know, that kind of answer, you know, but no, you're absolutely right. Yes, we are designing, and actually, as a matter of fact, one of these continuance models will be a 16-inch sealed subwoofer you see down on the floor. Right? I mean, you can take some images if you want and show that. That's an alpha pre-production model. So it will be slightly different from what you see here on the floor, but from the performance, we tested it. I just came from Malaysia. We had 2 of these subwoofers calibrated in a room. I mean, they just perform amazingly, you know. I mean, it's a 1 kilowatt amplifier built in. It's a woofer that does 22 millimeter linear excursion each way. We designed it with a carbon cone and a narrow but high roll surround that allows us basically to do this excursion, right? But also offer a much larger cone than a normal woofer this size. So it's almost an 18-inch, but right around the 17-inch real cone. You know, so to get basically the most extension, but yet also very punchy, very articulate, fast bass we are known for, right? So this is one of the next models we're, you know, doing in this respect, and of course there will be more models to follow, right? Yes.
Great, thank you. So your position, I imagine, to take you around the world, and you've likely heard some fairly epic cinema demonstrations in your time.
Yes.
Was there one that stood out for you, and why?
Yes, I hear a lot of cinemas out there. And maybe it sounds a little bit cocky when I say, did I really hear epic systems? Yeah. From a price perspective, yes. From a performance perspective, I was rather disappointed by most of them. You know, hearing basically the price levels spent on these theaters, and it has mostly to do with the, you know, calibration capabilities of the people, you know, and of course also of the room design capabilities. Because the room is, I would say, 85% of the perceived sound in a room, right? So the system makes a huge difference, but I think the least when you consider calibration and the room acoustics, right? And so that's why I say I'm rather underwhelmed, you know, when I hear some epic systems, because they are not on par with what we do today. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. I mean, that's really a point to discuss. But there is some good systems. Don't get me wrong, and I heard some really good systems. But when we compare it with what we do today, where you get just incredible dynamics, incredible resolution, incredible bass extension, articulation, clarity, energy, that is homogeneous really literally from 5 Hertz to 20K. Most of the systems I heard, not from us of course now, is that they like a lot of the energy, especially in the punchy bass area, from 80 Hertz and up, especially let's say in the low mid-range 250, where there is a lot of warmth in the voice, in the body, which sounds more natural, right? So they sound very lean, very, very, shallow, kind of, almost like the voice disappears. It's basically there is high frequencies left, and maybe there is a little bit of mid frequencies and stuff like that. So anyway, every system sounds different because mainly, of course, the room. So to answer that question, yes, I heard some very epic systems in terms of price point. Was I impressed? No, not really.
Well, thank you for your honesty, Jeff. Before I let you go, is there anything we haven't touched on today about ASCENDO that perhaps you'd like to share?
Yeah, we're working on a lot of very exciting products that are always, products that have not been invented yet. And so I feel that this can be something quite interesting for the markets, because these products will solve a lot of issues. I cannot tell you what these products are, but hang on tight and you will know soon,
All right.
But also there is a lot of talk, for bass management, from the higher end processor manufacturers, there is of course Trenov with waveforming, which we just did an epic demo at CEDIA in Denver this year, and so we learned a lot about these technologies, and of course there is other companies using direct live, the bass management part, which also has certain benefits in some rooms, and also we still like very much the normal bass setup with our two-way subwoofer cluster, kick subs and infrasonic subs, and we develop basically products for both camps, so to speak, right? So watch out basically for new subwoofers to come, for either one, and we can solve all the subwoofer issues. We're quite well known for that, of course, and so we're extremely innovative for that. But also, we come out with new what we call high-pass speakers. So basically, all the speakers they need to play 80 Hertz and up. We also come out with what we call kick woofers that are more extensions for normal surround speakers, because some of these technology camps, want woofers that basically extend the normal loudspeaker below 80 Hertz, maybe into the 40, 50 Hertz region. So we will fill the lines basically with a lot of those kind of products as well that help solve certain problems or certain desires, to design a system. And so we will definitely be available for all these designs.
That sounds very interesting.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, yeah, thank you.
Finally, I think we've already touched on this a little bit. I was going to ask you about your future vision for
Yes.
ASCENDO.
Yep.
But what's your vision for the home cinema industry, and where do you see it, or what do you think it'll look like in 2 or 3 decades' time?
Well, I think I hope very much that what we contributed also with the CEDIA and the RP22 effort, the recommended practices. I beg all of you guys watching this, read the entire RP22 design guide, because it gives you a lot of answers where the industry will go. Hopefully it will be more transparent. Hopefully it will be more based on physics, based on true measurements. There will be more honesty in the market, how manufacturers really show the data. And hopefully the companies that don't show the data will be gone, because that is, we're living in 2023, I mean, we know a lot today we didn't know 10 or 20 years ago. I know there is a lot of, people, they like all the retro stuff, but why is that? That's a very good question, because the retro loudspeakers, they had dynamics. Most of the loudspeakers, they're just lame today. They have no dynamics, they sound dull. It's just not up to the task of 2023 listening to music. We have high-res music today, we have high dynamic music today. We produce really, really good content today. So that also should be rendered with the appropriate speakers, and of course some changes will be in how that really is not really much in the audio side. It's more on how the content is being distributed, but all will be streaming, obviously, yeah. And there will be different levels of streaming quality content, if we're talking DCI, for example, so completely uncompressed. I mean, a movie takes 2 terabytes, right? Mm-hmm. Or let's say, there is Kaleidoscape as high-end renderer, I mean, that has double or triple the quality of a normal Blu-ray. Blu-rays will go away, so there will be, of course, the streaming services, like the well-known ones, and they, of course, hopefully work on increasing their bandwidth, which all helps in the end of the day, because it's always audio that gets compressed. Not the video part also, don't get me wrong, but audio suffers the most. So we, of course, hope that these services really live up to a wider bandwidth, and give us better content. Because once you heard DCI, you understand what the real thing could sound like, in terms of dynamic and quality. And all the speakers and all the systems would sound so much better. So I think this is really a broad, overall, real quick, thought of what I hope the industry will be, and what I have in mind myself, to help the industry grow. Also, all the dealers need to live up to, there is some very well-known customers out there. They know more than some of the dealers in our industry, so the dealers really need to educate themselves better, and learn more. And that's where, CEDIA is one of the organizations definitely that can help, and I'm willing to make my contribution in doing classes. Yeah, so yeah, I would say that would conclude my answer there.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure.
Finally, we're asking our guest to put forward just one question to ask for other audio equipment manufacturers in our interviews. Without knowing who the brand or guest would be, what's one question you'd ask?
Show me your data. That's all. Show me your data.
Good. Jeff, on behalf of StereoNET, thank you for making the trip to Australia.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And to the show, and thank you for a very insightful and excellent look at ASCENDO.
Tony, thank you so much for having me here. Yep,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, Jeff, if viewers want more information about your products, where can they go for that?
All right, very simple. You go to aia-cinema.com or ascendo.de. It's actually spelled, I hope everybody knows that, but ASCENDO, ASCENDO. It comes from a Latin word ascendere, so grow up, ascend, right? But it's ASCENDO.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time today.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.